What is Brazil's position in the international marketplace? And again, please don't let me offend anybody. I'll start with the good news, clearly. The racehorse produced in Brazil is highly regarded. In breeding products, Brazil is doing well. How could it be otherwise when a Brazil-bred horse wins the Dubai World Cup? Trainers and breeders in the United States are well aware of the quality of the horse, and Brazilian-bred horses continue to impress the world every day, and its betters every day. It was said to me recently that as long as there are American buyers for the best horses in Brazil, there will always be a Brazilian thoroughbred breeding business. Well, that may be true, but it's not a very good business plan. It is also true that the breeding market cannot improve itself if it must constantly sell its best horses to somebody else in order to survive. It needs to be able to sell its horses here to people who can afford to own them because prize monies are making it a sensible business decision. And also, the message underlying this for breeders is that your product will not reach the success it can in the international marketplace without a strong support system here at home. The more troublesome reality is here in betting products. Brazil's horse betting product is almost invisible internationally. That's not surprising given how competitive that marketplace is. And you can say, well, we really haven't started to try yet. We're not there because we haven't begun to really get serious. Remember that phrase, get serious. As I mentioned before, everybody wants to export and would probably be happy to send their product here, but few are interested in importing racing products from anywhere, including Brazil. There's a lot of product substitution at the lower end of the market, and by that product substitution, I mean if you have Brazil's product, that's fine, but you may as well have Argentina's. And if you don't have Argentina's, you may as well have Chile's. And if you don't have Chile's, you may as well have product from the Netherlands. There's product substitution because there's a lot of product out there, and they get to pick and choose who gets distributed internationally. This has become a complicated business that must be managed consistently, fairly, and I think I heard the word before, professionally. This is no longer a sport. It's a sport in many wonderful ways. It's a serious business in most ways. The perception of Brazilian horse racing out in the world. Well, I'll speak to America because I've spoken to American racing managers. I know most of them, one way or the other. So, conducted an informal survey. The perception of Brazilian horse racing is that it does not treat betting on horses very seriously. The belief is, among racing managers who would import the product if they thought it could be imported, the belief is that the betting product that Brazil produces is not yet professional enough to attract American or international players on a constant productive basis. What goes into a good betting product? Quantity, quality, consistency, and reliability, not just in the horses, but in information about the horses. You may be surprised by the emphasis here on information, data, This is the way the world is going. Horse racing is a handicapping. It's a academic exercise. You handicap, you use information to make judgments about who you're going to bet on. There is no, you don't get any more, start over. We can no longer behave as if bettors in the world are fortunate with whatever we give them. They have to be satisfied with whatever we give them. They get great information from other places about what horses did in a race, where they were at every point in a race, all of the horses, all of the times. This is past performance information, and I think everybody here knows in this room that here we don't do a very good job of it. So when you get out in the big world, where other people are doing a good job of it, you're not going to be competitive, because bettors do not know and do not trust the information. They don't get enough information, and they don't trust it anyway. So they're not going to be betting into Brazil's pools until we fix the information issue. The idea that whatever we provide, it will have to be good enough for them, that would be the same as saying, if you ran a restaurant, your customers have to be satisfied with whatever food you give them. Now that would be ridiculous, right? I think you can understand that they can go out and go to another restaurant. And in the world's racing marketplace, this restaurant will not be serving good, if it doesn't serve good food, nobody's going to be buying its food. You have to constantly upgrade the product. In the international betting marketplace, the winners will always be the ones that provide the best product and the best information about it. So, over the short term, there might be an opportunity for Brazil's product to be offered in other markets. But in the current circumstance, this can't generate very much money. The product cannot be competitive, is not competitive out there. A carrier might be willing to come along and say, well, in return for us bringing races here into Brazil, we'll take your product out. But even if they took the product out to the world wouldn't buy it right now. Can we change this? Absolutely. A step forward in organization and management around these needs, these sophisticated business needs, is what's necessary. Over the long term, a healthy, balanced, well-managed, organized domestic racing and breeding business is the only way to support a product that can be successful out in the rest of the world. Let's take a moment now to discuss some trends. As you can see, the good news is we're up to number 7. We're only going to 10. So everybody, we're almost there. There are other things going on out in the world. And every one of these deserves an hour. And we don't have an hour for each one of them. So I am going to be very brief and too simple. But let's understand some of the things that are going on out there. And incidentally, I will say before we go through them that many of these are not well understood. The results are not yet in. Let me explain that. Racino is a word that has cropped up in the United States to mean a casino at a racetrack. A racetrack that offers some form of casino gambling, okay? And typically electronic devices, slot machines, or video lottery terminals, something like that. There are now 47 racetracks in the United States in 13 states that have some form of slot machine or electronic device at them. There is no question that those games at racetracks generate revenue, just the same as they would if you put them anywhere in a marketplace. Doesn't matter that they're at racetracks. If you took the same number of machines and put it in a building across the road from a racetrack or a mile away, they would do just as well. But they happen to be at racetracks. There's a good reason why they're at racetracks. Because racetracks in many states in the United States, and many states here, have the only right to have certain forms of gambling at them. So, people could put together in their heads, well, we have a form of gambling, let's buy the racetrack license. Let's use this license that was originally meant for racetracks to bring casino games in. Okay? Now, the revenue that's generated from racinos has been significant, and some of it has been used for American purses. And if you remember, American purses have held up reasonably well. They're still at about $1 billion, while turnover on American races has dropped from $15 billion to $10 billion. So we have a conclusion to be made here that this is helping purses, helping prize monies stay up. But before we accept that line of thinking, we have to also look at the fact that betting is down in the United States from $15 billion to $10 billion. So, even with casinos at racetracks, people are betting less on horses. This is a very important point because you cannot discuss the idea of having gaming at racetracks without understanding that there is a cost. And right now, in the United States, the trend of betting going down, I think everybody here, again, can imagine this is not what I call a sustainable business plan. This is not a plan. When betting on horse races reaches a certain point, government and managements that brought in casinos are going to say, why are we doing that? Why are we still doing that? And at that point, horse racing, which has learned to be taken care of, suddenly finds itself out of business. It's not my job to scare people here, but I want everybody to understand that this is a controversy in the United States, and it's not clear what the right answer is. So nobody can stand before you and say that slot machines are the solution to horse racing's future. They cannot say that. They could be a part of that future. But, and here's my major statement on this subject, they will only work if they are entirely dedicated to the future of horse racing. In other words, that there can never be a separation that allows horse racing to go away because horse racing made it possible in the first place. And that governments have very short memories. It's possible that casino companies have even shorter memories. Together, it'll be very easy to forget where all of this came from, and for that reason, horse racing needs to get the right deal. I wouldn't even say the best, the right deal, or continue, and this is a very important theme, continue to find ways to do well on its own. To not allow these subsidies to change the need to make horse racing a better game. And by doing that, to save the jobs and the horses and all the other wonderful things that horse racing does. So again, my point is, nobody can say that this is the savior of racing. Account wagering. Account wagering has been a big success around the world. It now represents in the United States 25% of the betting. Account betting is when you have a telephone account or an online account and you can bet from home or from your pocket. You cannot go to a racing meeting today without somebody doing what Sergio did before. See this? This is it's a betting machine. Oh yeah, you can also talk on it. The fewer and fewer people doing that, but you can bet on it. Account wagering uses horse racing product and represents a very, very successful new theme for where we are going with convenience and technology. Again, it's not easy, but this trend is absolute. People betting out of their pocket increased 300% last year in the United States, meaning the phone as opposed to their laptop. And as these phones become more powerful, more people are going to be doing that. And we do, as an industry, we do not have a choice. We don't get to say, well, we're not going to do that. That would be silly. We have to do that. We have to provide product, games, and information that is tailored to this equipment. Exchange betting, I won't get into very much, but it's fairly, it comes up. It's a form of betting that allows me to get online and to offer a price on a horse, and then somebody else out in the world can take that price. So I'm betting the horse to win, and somebody else is betting him to lose, effectively. We are doing a little bookmaking deal between us. This has so many problems from an economic standpoint that I don't have the time today to explain it all, other than to say that exchange betting has been successful in Britain, Great Britain, only because, remember, Great Britain has the lowest amount going to the racing industry of almost anybody in the world. So it shouldn't surprise anybody that this idea of matching up bettors and having a good product for players creates an economic problem. For every dollar that goes from a racetrack setting into exchange betting, horse racing loses a lot of money. Now, exchange betting people would first of all get very upset with what I just said, and they would say, this is very popular. Yes, we may be giving you less revenue, but we will have much more turnover, much more betting through this system, and in the end, you'll be a winner. And I would say it's very hard for us to get from here to there. It's very hard for us as an industry, as horse racing, to say, we believe you. So, because they will be a winner all the way along, and if we don't get back to where we need it to be revenue-wise, again, prize money, it's a very, very difficult economic problem to work your way through. But if you hear about exchange betting, once again, it's not the answer to anything. It's one more possibility, but it has to be done the right way. Rebating is something that happens to all of us all the time when we go to a grocery store, we fly on an airplane, and they give us things for doing business with them. In horse racing, rebating has become a process of giving big bettors money back for betting. When you get to $1 million, you get $10,000 back. Now, again, without getting into too many of the complications here, this means that players, professional gamblers, are getting help, and that's not always good for the people we need to be betting on horses. Okay? So in the end, the difference between rebating in horse racing and rebating in the world of groceries is that horse racing encourages, it changes the marketplace, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So, my point in all of this is that it's a complicated world out there. And only people who understand how these things work can really make good decisions moving into the future and understand how all of them work, and this is just 4 of them. So it's not surprising that somebody could come in the door and say, exchange betting would be great for Brazil. And if you don't know what that means or how it relates to these other things, you might say, yes, sure, okay, sounds good. But unfortunately, it's more complicated than that. What are the other gaming industries doing? Very quickly, they are aggressively looking for new markets, not a surprise. They are creating new products. And they're competing for software developers, software designers out in the world to create those new products. I would like to be able to say the same about horse racing, but I cannot. We don't have many software designers creating new products out there in the world. And that's a problem because the competition is doing it. So we need to get on about the job of creating new products and paying people to create new products. Here we get down to the key questions. Can horse racing stand on its own? In my opinion, horse racing has been playing not to lose in the last few years. And I think those of us who watch football on television understand what I'm saying. A team that's playing not to lose is playing defensively. And more often than not, it loses because it forgets that it needs to score in order to win. If you're playing defensively, the best you can hope for is a tie, 0-0. And most often you will lose 1-0. It is time for horse racing to start playing to win again. Remember, I said horse racing has many advantages, and it starts with the horse as an athlete. There are many examples of success in the marketplace. This is a very good time to own a good horse in the United States of America. If you win two races, your horse will be well paid for training for the entire year. It's not uncommon in the United States right now for horses that have never won a race, what we call maiden special races, to go for $70,000 US. Purses are very high. It's a good time to be a trainer, a good trainer. It's a good time to be a jockey. It's a good time for many things. And that's because this is an excellent time in the world to be in the business of taking bets. This is an excellent time to be in the business of taking bets in the world. The key to horse racing, standing on its own, is to understand that we can be a leader in convenience betting because we have a product that works very well on these machines and on laptops. A lot of information, but they give you the ability to sort through information. They also give you the ability to communicate with us with betting wherever you are, whenever you want to. Another key is that we all have to understand that the old way of doing it can no longer be successful. It's a well-known comment by the great Albert Einstein that the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That's the definition of madness. And if you think that we can continue to do the same thing and that people will come back to us, you should be looking for another business because that's not a good model. That's not a plan. Today's efficient technology-powered horse racing, unquestionably in my mind, is able to stand on its own in the gambling marketplace if it gets on about the business of playing to win instead of playing not to lose. The question for us here today and for Brazil moving forward is how to create the business vehicle to carry us down this road. Can Brazil build a successful racing and breeding system? The answer is yes. And I will start by saying it's very easy for me to say that the answer is yes, and this is not easy to do. But I am saying the answer to this question is yes. Planning and priorities. It's difficult to reach a destination without a map. Horse racing in Brazil can be successful, and Brazilian racing can be successful internationally. But first, we must understand what it takes to be successful. What does success look like? And create a vision around that. Where do we want to be in 5 years? And then create a map to get there. To be a successful restaurant, you have to fix the kitchen before you start to try to offer food. We need to fix our kitchen before we start to move product out to everybody. That brings up product development. We need to understand our own menu of bets. This is, again, part of being a professional in the horse racing business. When people ask me about betting and the kinds of bets that you can make at a racetrack, you can bet to win, you can bet an exacta, you can bet a trifecta, and in many jurisdictions these have different names, but I think these are similar. Right. Many racetrack managements don't think about the fact that every bet on your menu has a job to do. Just like every dish you serve at a restaurant has a job to do. When you look at a menu at a restaurant, there's a dish for people who like fish. There's a dish for people who like salad. There's a dish for people who like beef. This sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Well, in a racing menu, if you want to win 1,000 reais or 10,000 reais, you probably should not be betting to win. You need to be betting a trifecta. So my way of thinking is that the trifecta is there to serve the people who want to win a flat screen TV. And an exacta is there for people who want to win a nice dinner somewhere. They would walk out of the racetrack or finish the day betting on their phone and say, I had a really good day. I won enough to buy dinner. That's what that bettor wanted. That's all they wanted. If you want to win $1 million US at a racetrack, you're probably not going to be able to do it here, but there should be a product that would allow you to do that. And if all you're interested in doing is just doing better than your friend standing next to you, and you just want to make enough money to pay your way home, you're betting in the win pool. Every bet has a job to do. If we don't understand that, we shouldn't be running a racetrack, right? That's what I'm saying. If we don't understand that as a breeder, then we don't really understand how the racing business works. So we need to get together in our understanding of what we're trying to do. We have to understand the menu. We have to understand our clients, our customers. What do they want? Stop thinking just people. It certainly does mean good people, but it also means professional, consistent management of issues, knowing how to deal with the question about exchange betting or racinos relative to other possibilities. If you don't fully understand the business, you're going to have a very hard time making an intelligent choice about a significant possibility for racing and breeding in Brazil. It's very hard to achieve this on a part-time basis. I hate to say it, but let me go at it another way. In the United States, a club is defined as a group of people who get together for social purposes. That's what a club is. Right? We don't have racing clubs in America. We have racing businesses. Right? There's a big difference. As long as you think of yourself as a club, you are not going to be able to make good business decisions. As long as you think that it's a part-time job, it's going to be hard to have what I call a full 360-degree view of the issues that come in and how to manage them. I don't know of any successful racetrack in the United States or anywhere in the world that elects people every few years and brings in completely different people to manage very complicated things. I just don't know of anyone, anywhere, that does it that way and succeeds. There are certainly different presidents that come in and work at racetracks, but typically the same people are there. The professionals are still there every day trying to figure out how to make things work. This is a very difficult subject to be talking about because I know it's sensitive. But I'm simply saying, from my experience, this doesn't, it's the difference between a club and a business and a company. You would not run your company that way. So what happens next? If there's one consistent theme to be drawn from racing everywhere in the world, it is that very little can be accomplished when one segment of the business tries to improve itself at the expense of the others. Racetracks and horse owners and breeders and trainers must have an understanding of that, because in my experience, any one of them can stop all the others. One group can stop everybody else. That doesn't make sense. It's much easier to prevent progress than it is to achieve it. So, transparency and communication and shared objectives are critically important in horse racing. And as I said, the model that we can take from around the world, they're all different, but they all come back to the same place. The more organization that you can bring, the better off you're going to be. And we have an opportunity to take what is a relatively disorganized situation here and turn it into a model for the world. I don't want to get too far out in front here, but that's the beauty of technology, and it's also the beauty of people that can figure out how to work together and say there is a better way, and we're going to create a structure to make that happen. This is an obvious one, so it doesn't need much time, but if you don't have good public relations, you're going to have lousy government relations, right? Because in the end, even in most places in the world today still, what people believe ends up being what government believes. And we've been working through that, and Brazil's been doing a good job of working through that. But in the end, these pay attention to these. And if people don't care about you, government's not going to care about you. And if people do care about your story and do care about horses and horse racing, they will care about it. There's a whole sense of confidence that has to come along with the effort to get investment. Can we find new investment for racing in Brazil? Certainly we can, but we have to create something for people to be confident in. But the right formula, this is as we've agreed, this is a very attractive market. Can I bring some investment? Can we find investment here for this very attractive market? Of course we can, but we have to create the story, the business story that investment wants to see. Let me leave you with two related thoughts. Adding electronic gaming at racetracks should not be an objective. Should not be an objective. It's not a goal. It is an option, and it needs to be explored. But the process of getting electronic gaming machines is usually a long one. It usually takes a lot of time politically. It's often long and unpleasant, and the results, as I said, are mixed. Most importantly, the argument that racing can't survive without slot machines can lead to a very unfortunate strategy. And that is that you stop investing in horse racing in order to prove your point that you need to have slot machines. And that I have personally witnessed in places around the world and in the United States. I've watched horse racing deteriorate beyond repair in some places while people were waiting for slot machines to be approved. In many states in the United States, it's taken 20 years for slot machines to be approved. And the reason is that it's not an easy political government decision. When you start down the path, you need to be prepared to go all the way. And the worst thing that can happen is that in the meantime, you allow horse racing to deteriorate in order to either make the point, or it just deteriorates because you're not paying attention to it. That's unacceptable to me. And it does not have to be that way. Organization, this is my second point, organization and coordination in horse racing usually leads to a good outcome. This is probably the most difficult and controversial thing I could be saying here in Brazil, is that we need to work together, because apparently we have not been able to do this up to this point. I cannot imagine a situation where the racetracks in the country have not figured out that working together they can create a better marketplace than by trying to figure out who can do better than the other guy in their relationship of simulcast. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's a huge marketplace out there, and coordinating how we serve it and how we bring in simulcast product and how we exchange the marketplaces economically. I have a lot of experience in doing this in the United States, and it is no more complicated here than it was there. Just as many, I see states, Brazil is much bigger in terms of land, but I can think of 3 or 4 American states where the situation is almost exactly the same. You had 6 or 7 racetracks and some smaller ones, and we had to figure out how to move product around so that everybody was getting a fair amount. And it's complicated and it's difficult, but it's not impossible. So I can't imagine that my saying we should be working together here becomes the most controversial thing I say, or that people walk out of the room saying, well, we can't do that. We can do a lot of these other things he was talking about, but working together, we can't do that. That would be crazy, right? If you were at a conference for another business and people walked out of the room saying, well, the one thing we can't do is work together. You would say, what kind of business is this? It could be that a new private or private-public authority, some structure that allows all of the interests to have a voice, and every interest deserves a voice. Owners, breeders, horsemen, racetracks. It's very hard to make progress unless you are covering all of these stakeholders, these interests. But it could be that some sort of private, semi-private authority can be created. I don't know. It could be that we just need a new business structure. We don't need a formal authority, but we need a process whereby we can get everybody understanding and working on the plan for the future. Somebody has to lead, but everybody can be joining in. My point is this, and we're done. We have the opportunity here to genuinely explore options like this. There is no reason why this cannot be done. I'll say that again. There is no reason why this cannot be done. I may be a naive American coming here not understanding the reality of the Brazilian market. I promise you, I have seen worse in America. I promise you, I have seen worse in America in terms of people thinking they can't work together and get on the same page. I will also promise you that the best future for horse racing in any country in the world is the one where it's organized. And if that's the key to moving forward, let's get on with it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So, Tom, we are starting with the questions here, and I'm going to try to translate them to you, but before that, I will ask you 2 minutes. Maybe I'm passing them an impression and some positions about just all of what we passed here today. And then we go through the questions.
Great,
Is that correct?
thank you.
Is that okay? Eu queria só pedir 2 minutos de atenção a vocês, porque acho que essa finalização e um pouco do que o Tom abordou aqui nesse final vem como um ponto importante, volta à origem aqui da nossa associação. A razão dela existir principal vem como uma proposta de mudança da estrutura de gestão do turf no Brasil. Isso aqui não tem nada a ver com questões políticas, muito menos pessoais, é uma estrutura realmente que foi vencedora na origem, 50 anos atrás, 100 anos atrás, quer dizer, praticamente construiu tudo que nós temos, mas de 30 anos para cá ela realmente deixou de ser eficiente. E nós precisamos pensar num modelo alternativo. Passa por questões estruturais de clube A, clube B, clube C, nós realmente precisamos nos juntar e discutir essa questão desse modelo e pensar em alternativas para essa gestão. E eu faço um exemplo rápido para vocês, que foi a gestão do Dr. Fragoso no Jockey Clube Brasileiro anos atrás. Talvez é das gestões mais exemplares que a gente teve aqui no passado, fez com que a atividade lá, que estava praticamente destruída, se recuperasse. Os primeiros 3 anos de gestão relembrado até hoje. E praticamente esse processo aonde levou? Praticamente uma melhora muito grande, a recuperação da hegemonia praticamente do Jockey Clube Brasileiro perante os outros, mas isso saiu a gestão do Dr. Fragoso, isso se perdeu. Então aqui nós realmente precisamos ter um modelo que seja perene, que seja contínuo e que atenda a atividade, que seja profissional, que possa realmente manter o interesse pela atividade e, como vocês puderam ver, quer dizer, hoje não existe mais essa atividade, apostas em corridas, está sendo feita de uma maneira não profissional. Nós precisamos encontrar a maneira com que essa atividade possa ser pensada, estruturada de maneira profissional e nós precisamos trazer praticamente, na medida do possível, todos os jockeys clubes para dentro deste formato. Como fazer isso é um grande desafio, sem dúvida Nós temos a comunicação do governo sendo feita através do Ministério da Agricultura, Câmara de Agricultura, Grupo de Revitalização do turf, e, basicamente, nós, sinceramente, tirando os 4 jockeys clubes e a BCPCC, Sérgio, presidente, que estava aqui até agora, teve que sair, mas, na verdade, essa representação ela é relativa. Nós não temos, entre aspas, todos os jockeys clubes presentes, nós não temos os profissionais presentes nessa discussão, nós não temos os proprietários e criadores de uma maneira aprofundada presentes nessa discussão. Então, o que a Associação, na verdade, Paulista vai colocar de pé, e fica aqui aberto o convite para que todos os que tenham interesse venham a participar, é um fórum onde todos estarão presentes para provocar essa discussão. A gente faz questão que os profissionais estejam presentes. Nós não podemos mais viver, poucos sabem, mas nós estamos, por exemplo, tendo uma discussão hoje do novo Código de Corridas, e vocês do quarto de milha, por exemplo, provavelmente não têm nem ideia que isso está acontecendo. O Código de Corridas vai afetar vocês tremendamente. Os profissionais não têm participação sobre um assunto como esse. E está sendo discutido um novo Código de Corridas. Alguém sentou com um profissional para saber se o que está colocado lá tem coerência, se está certo ou está errado? Não. Esse é o formato que a gente faz as coisas, vem fazendo ao longo desses últimos 50 anos. Isso precisa mudar. Que os dias de hoje a gente vê uma situação como essa acontecendo aqui nas ruas, é um momento de mudança, a gente precisa mudar. Esse modelo não funciona mais. E as pessoas precisam entender. E a gente precisa realmente da junção, da união dos que têm a proposta de mudança. Né? Então, colocando essa última mensagem para vocês, eu vou abrir aqui e voltar à questão das perguntas. Pessoal, starting with João Maza. Eu vou fazer em português, depois eu tento traduzir. O Brasil tem dimensões continentais. É possível construir um sistema exitoso a partir de um único grupo ou hipódromo? So he's asking if Brazil is a big country. if it's possible to have a system, basically a system that's owned from one racetrack or one single group that owns and manages all the country, if you think that's possible.
It's very hard to get from private enterprise to something like that. Because remember, it's not just racetracks that have an interest and an investment. You also have owners and breeders and farms, and they represent a very significant investment as well. So figuring out how to create an authority is a complicated matter, but in terms of creating a structure that can help, absolutely. So it's really a difference, getting from private enterprise to a situation of common ownership of all the assets is very complicated. Not impossible, but complicated, because there are other interests that have complicated asset valuations in this situation as well. However, getting to an operating structure that can make decisions and lead all of the entities in the right direction, I think that's very possible. Does that answer the question?
Yes, and the second part of the question is if São Paulo and Rio, if they don't connect and don't go in the same direction, what do you think, what's going to happen if that in our scenario? Se eu entendi a pergunta aqui.
I'm not familiar enough with all of the pieces of the puzzle here, but I will say that in other situations like this that I've worked on, if there is enough energy and interest in the other parts of the industry to move forward, then eventually the people who don't want to play initially come along later on. If you have a big idea and you have a way to do it, then you can be successful even if everybody is not there in the starting gate with you.
Só uma somatória aqui, João, na posição dele, quer dizer, se a gente imaginar que obrigatoriamente a gente precisa o convencimento de São Paulo e Rio de Janeiro para uma mudança do modelo, eu diria, sem dúvida, são as duas estruturas mais importantes e ajudaria muito se a gente puder fazer com que eles estejam dentro dessa proposta de mudança. Se isso não for possível, não está dito que a gente vai ficar aqui a reboque e refém das situações e das definições que eventualmente acontecerão. Acho que tem um trabalho enorme para ser feito, que existem outros tantos jockeys clubes com sérios problemas e basicamente os problemas são os mesmos. É a falta de renda e a falta de espaço para apostas. Então, se a gente conseguir condensar entre os outros jockeys clubes, por exemplo, uma discussão e colocar de pé um modelo que possa ser vencedor, e por que não, eventualmente, a aderência posterior. Isso pode acontecer.
That's what I meant to say.
Marcos Rizon, he left because there's basically they are selling some. He has a compromise now. He's a journalist here, and he left you a question. A pergunta do Marcos Rizon. Em primeiro lugar, parabenizando aqui pela iniciativa. Congratulações ao Dr. Sérgio e ao Tom pelas explanações. Para a presidente Dilma, prometeu ao presidente do Jockey Club Rio Grande do Sul ajudar o TURF. Todavia, disse que se receberá a gente se tivermos um projeto pronto. Como faremos para consegui-lo, Tom?
Good luck with that. I can already tell. Good luck with that. Boa sorte.
I'm gonna answer first part and then I'll pass to it. Acho que a pergunta que vem aqui, ou seja, existe interlocução com o governo? É muito ruim. Eu posso testemunhar isso a vocês pessoalmente. O governo hoje, basicamente, se pudesse, ele acabava com a atividade nossa. A gente só bate lá nos últimos 20 anos para encher a paciência deles e para buscar como é que você faz para escapar de pagar imposto. Quer dizer, nós temos que entender que a atividade, por pouco que seja, uma contribuição para para isso, precisa dar. Né? E a gente quer ver de que maneira como a gente faz para escapar dos compromissos e tudo mais, pela dificuldade, pelos problemas que a gente vem enfrentando. Então, ao longo desses 10 anos, a gente vai apresentando um modelo, isso vai salvar, isso aqui que muda, etc. Essa é um pouco da história e da relação com o governo que a gente tem. Eles não compreendem o nosso negócio, eles não entendem o que é a atividade, e eles não têm nem a certeza de quanto importante que importância realmente ela tem. Então, nós precisamos cumprir com isso, que é a lição de casa, quer dizer, fazer com que eles entendam a importância da indústria, ao mesmo tempo trazer, como o Sérgio falou, o exemplo de fazer com que eles conheçam modelos que são vencedores, mas, além disso, a gente precisa realmente ter um plano. Esse plano precisa existir, quais são as mudanças que a gente, de uma certa maneira, pretende. Eu, particularmente, esperava que isso fosse discutido dentro do ambiente desse grupo de revitalização. Por incrível que pareça, não aceito a participação de outros dentro desse grupo de revitalização. Então, se isso não é possível, não importa. Aqui existem outros 10 jockeys clubes que não estão representados, existem criadores, proprietários, existem profissionais de turf, e nós vamos discutir esse plano dentro deste ambiente. E vamos fazer com que isso chegue realmente aos ouvidos do governo. Por que não? A gente tem um monte de ferramentas, tem gente de peso, entre aspas, que tem interesse pela atuidade. É uma questão de organização. Então, essa organização é a responsabilidade nossa, como associação, fazer com que isso fique de pé. Tom, com certeza, vai nos ajudar nessa tarefa, e nós vamos precisar muito de todos vocês. Né? Isso é um compromisso nosso, e a gente vai levar isso adiante. So, Tom, question is if we have the capacity to build a plant. And if this is an intention, I'm telling them that yes. And I would like to hear from you if you're also going to help us out on that.
I'd be honored to help out, because this is one of the most exciting opportunities in the world right now. But primarily because of my first love and interest in this, which is horse racing. It doesn't surprise me that other people are interested in this market for gaming. I'm interested in this for horse racing. And as I said, this may be complicated, it may be difficult, but I've seen equally difficult situations in other parts of the world move forward, and there's no reason why we can't do this here. So I would be happy to commit to being part of the process that creates a great racing and breeding industry here in Brazil.
Next question, pergunta que a Carol faz aqui, por tudo que and I translated after. Por tudo que foi exposto, tanto pelo Sérgio quanto por você, Tom, existe interesse nas corridas do Brasil, mas por estarmos desesperados, podemos cometer erros. Como foi feito, como foi o erro cometido lá no acordo com a Codere. A pergunta é como blindar o Brasil para buscar o parceiro correto. So she's asking is basically from what you said and from what Sergio just said, there's maybe a lot of different people interested in investing here in Brazil and bringing in support here for Brazil. But in the meantime, we are kind of desperate here with the scenario and the situation that we are facing. How can we protect basically our industry here for futures agreements in the way to establish a future contract or a future relationship that's going to stand and it's going to be under a good direction?
So the most important, by far the most important aspect of this to embrace, to understand, is that the solution needs to be developed here. It cannot be a solution that somebody else tells you they're coming in to do for you. There is no company in the world that is capable of representing Brazil's horse interests better than Brazil's horse interests can represent themselves. You have to create the process and the structure to do that. The process, and let me say, again, you don't absolutely have to have a structure, a formal structure. It helps. but you have to have a process. You have to have people understanding the vision. Here is where we're going. This is what's possible here. And draw that vision. You can draw it on a board. Here's what it looks like. Racing in Brazil, 2018, 2020. And now what pieces do we need to put into place in order to get there? And there can be many options, many different options that are explored, each one of them representing a potential investment by people. And each option that we develop will need to be able to return the investment of time and effort to the people who put into it. Not just investors, but breeders and owners and racetracks that are willing to work together in order to get to that future. Everybody's investing time and effort, but we need to first understand that there is something we're trying to get to. There is a place we're trying to get to, and here's the map that we're going to use to get there. And that's something that we can do. The hard part, and I think the hard part of the question is, we don't have a lot of time, if I'm paraphrasing correctly. And the answer to that is, let's get started now. We do have enough time. We just have to have a vision and a plan, and people will make sacrifices along the way if we are going in the right direction. Where you lose your energy is when you don't know where you're going and you begin to believe there is no solution. So we have an opportunity collectively to create a series of options that together bring us to a place in the future that is going to be much better than it is right now. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
Tom, let me just add a little bit on your answer. Carol, só para complementar um pouco da posição, quer dizer, a Associação Paulista, para alguns talvez não tenham nem conhecimento disso, ainda na gestão do Renato, decidiu por colocar de pé uma primeira análise que foi o Turf Forte. Esse processo é um projeto que tinha algumas etapas. A primeira etapa foi cumprida e aquilo dava pelo menos um panorama geral dos nossos problemas, da nossa realidade. Eu posso dizer a vocês que foi um trabalho muito importante. Isso tinha como propósito, a partir de um segundo momento, transformar aquilo realmente em um projeto. A partir do momento que a nova diretoria aqui em São Paulo assumiu, a Associação Paulista assumiu como compromisso um trabalho conjunto para buscar pôr de pé o que seria esse projeto. Nós, praticamente por um ano, trouxemos empresas de fora, buscamos por consultoria que pudesse nos ajudar em colocar de pé esse projeto. O que se tratava esse projeto? Na verdade, vinha analisar um pouco da situação e pôr de pé um primeiro programa de mudança. Isso tinha mudanças a serem feitas no Estatuto do Clube, tinham mudanças a serem feitas na própria gestão da atividade, e tudo isso foi colocado de pé. A associação disponibilizou esse esforço para o Jockey Clube de São Paulo. Existe um estatuto preparado, já há mais de um ano e meio, feito por um escritório de advocacia de grande importância, está dentro da gaveta da diretoria. Existe toda a intenção nossa de busca de um consultor que pudesse nos ajudar, inclusive na chamada de parceiros de fora. O que nós queremos? Nós queremos simulcast, a gente quer tecnologia, a gente quer suporte nas corridas, o que a gente quer? Então, a nossa recomendação, o que era? Antes de você trazer um eventual parceiro, vamos colocar de pé o que a gente quer. Depois que a gente colocou de pé o que a gente quer, você vai convidar, carta convite, você faz para 10 interessados. E eu posso dizer a vocês que a gente teria 10 interessados aqui, eventualmente, ouvindo, querendo participar desse assunto. Agora, uma vez que você não coloca isso de pé, que você está chamando alguém para pedir o quê? Então, essa situação, como você coloca, é realmente uma situação difícil. Esse processo está invertido. A gente deveria ter feito isso, infelizmente, a visão da diretoria foi outra, e decidiu por cumprir com um outro caminho. Esperamos, né? Também não sabemos, basicamente, do que a gente que a gente vai enfrentar, qual é a situação que existe aí hoje, né? Partindo para outra pergunta aqui. It's coming from Eduardo. In the U.S., are decisions with might impact... deixa eu traduzir para o português. Se nos Estados Unidos existem decisões que impactam na indústria, sendo tomadas sem envolvimento dos profissionais e sem envolvimento dos criadores e proprietários. Se uma decisão estruturada que pode direcionar um novo caminho para o TUF, se isso acontece na realidade americana sem a participação direta dos profissionais e sem a participação dos criadores e proprietários. Eduardo is asking if there's changes or new regulations or things like that in the United States, if they could come without the involvement of the horsemen and the breeders and owners in the table in the discussions.
No, it never, I have never seen anything be accomplished in the United States with the government that didn't involve all of the interests in horse racing going and asking together. Typically now, any state government says to the horse racing industry, don't bother coming to us unless you've already figured out what you all want and you're all going to support it. We don't want to hear we don't want you to ask for something and then we find out that the racetracks don't support it, or then we find out that the breeders don't support it. So all of that leads right back to we have to get, as we say, our act together as an industry before we can start talking to the public, to government, or racing interests overseas. As long as we have a coherent voice together, we have something to say. Separately, it's just noise.
Tom, not only asking about business with the government, I'm asking about decisions taken by the racetracks itself that don't involve horsemen, breeders, and owners.
Well, they try, and it can cause a great deal of trouble. Typically, in the United States, there is a federal law that has to do with moving simulcasting signals state to state. And I'll simply say that the horsemen have the ability, they have a say in that law. The law gives them the right to approve or not approve the movement of betting from one state to the other. Here's my point. When a racetrack, let's just say if a racetrack consistently tries to ignore what the horsemen want in the United States, eventually the horsemen can say, stop, or else we will remove our approval for sending signals around. This is not a recommendation that we need a law of that type here, but I am simply saying that there are balances in the United States because we recognized at least a few years ago that horsemen have a legitimate voice in the future of horse racing. Owners and breeders have a legitimate voice. So while it is disorganized, on a state-by-state basis, again, pretty much the government and all of the interest groups recognize they have to work together, or they will not achieve anything. So, does that answer your question, Eduardo? I don't know that these days racetracks in the United States do not have the option of completely ignoring horsemen and owners and breeders. When a racetrack is considering bringing in slot machines, the only way that's going to be approved by a state government is if it thinks that horse people are getting a proper share. It's my feeling that they have not negotiated the right situation yet. But I'm simply saying that government does pay attention to all of the groups, so.
Tom, I think we're finished.
Good.
So
Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for coming down, and I think this is the first step of future work. Oh, please. Okay.
No. I haven't finished my question. That's the worst kind of question.
Translated first. Minha pergunta é se produto que serve para corrida de cavalo inglês serviria para cancha reta ou para corrida de quarto de milha. Based on your experience in the United States, can you tell us if a product that works for thoroughbred racing would work for quarter horse or mixed races? Racing?
It's a very sensitive question. How many, I would say, how many people are in the room, and then I'll decide how to answer the question. I believe that there are, let me put the answer this way. I believe that the people, the customers who are not currently paying attention to horse racing would be okay on products that we mix together. In other words, the world out there is made up of a very small slice of people who are paying attention to horse racing and a large group of people who are not. In creating new products for people, we can get beyond a lot of things that we think people care about that they really don't. I don't know whether a quarter horse or mixed or, but it's not up to me to decide. It's up to us to put products in front of people and to say, do you like this or not? It stands to reason that in a thoroughbred market, that people are more interested that way, but until you actually try, until you put things in front of them, we don't know. And the time has got to stop when we think about our gambling product as we're deciding, and whether you like it or not, here's our product. That makes no sense in the marketplace. So I might have some opinions about it, but I'd rather try it.
Tom, following on Myra's question, is it possible to say that it's very important that racetracks, jockey clubs, as we call here, from thoroughbreds who conduct thoroughbred racing, quarter horse racing, work together to achieve those goals? Planscape, we can look at the future in which we work together to put a plan in front of the government. What does your experience from the United States take you to a conclusion?
So you're again asking about including other breeds in the process?
Specifically quarter horses, because here in the state, in São Paulo state, there is a quarter horse track not far from São Paulo.
And there are a lot of quarter horses, and there are a lot of quarter horse people.
Yes,
so
indeed.
I certainly would say that the more votes we can get, the better off we're going to be. That doesn't mean that right now we are trading anything away at this moment. We are talking about an alliance, an effective alliance that leads racing to a better place. So at this point in the process, I'd say we should be open to everything.
Hi. Hi. First of all, it's nice hearing for somebody from USA and the experiences and the impressions about our world here in the horse racing.
thank you.
But my question is that we have a huge problem here from years that we cannot incorporate the big players in our bets. Yeah, that's why we are suffering with small bets, because we cannot take their bets because the amount is so high and we do not have the volume of bets to incorporate. The solution that everybody hears thinks it's possible is to incorporate the simulcasting in order to achieve this big amount of bets, and then be able to incorporate the bets of those high players. Yeah.
Right.
And since that being so, yeah, the only conclusion that I can draw from today is that we should start improving our product, because we should have a better product to sell our races abroad and be able to increase the amount of bets. Yeah, I can translate. I don't know if. Não, o que estava falando é que o nosso problema aqui no Brasil é que há muito tempo a gente não consegue chamar os grandes apostadores para o nosso jogo. Eles não conseguem apostar porque o volume é muito pequeno e eles não apostam. E a única solução que a gente via era vender o simulcasting para fora e ter mais dinheiro entrando aqui e possibilitar com isso que os grandes apostadores entrassem no nosso jogo, né? E só que o nosso produto é ruim, a gente não consegue vender. Isso foi o que a gente sempre ouviu, e a gente ouviu de novo agora, doutor, que o nosso produto é muito ruim hoje e que se a gente colocar isso numa TV lá fora, a gente não vai vender. Então a gente precisa começar melhorando, e a minha pergunta para ele foi se ele acha que esse é realmente o nosso maior problema hoje.
There were many good questions in what you had to say, so I'll try to keep it brief. Simulcasting is just a question of price. What does a racetrack, what does a state, what does a country get if it allows its people to bet on a product? Okay? If people want to offer betting in Brazil, if people want to put their product here in Brazil, they should pay Brazil a fair price for allowing its players to play into those pools. It's just a negotiation on price. And that's why, again, we get back to the professional and the business. I don't know exactly what I would say is the right price, but if Magna or anybody wants to drop product in here, they should be paying a fair price to Brazil, and that means a fair price not just to the racetrack, but to owners and breeders, a share of prize monies in order to do that. The question of a big pool, there's no doubt about that big pools attract big players. But I will say here that big players are not the only route to a very successful business. You don't hear very often about big players in the lottery, but the lottery is very successful. It's right. But it's not something that depends on a big player. It depends on a lot of people like us. I mean, maybe there are big players in the room. I don't know that anybody looks like a big player, but if you are, I'll be happy to speak to you later on. But let's just say that I wouldn't be, if I wanted to create a game for us to play here, I wouldn't be worried about anybody being a big bettor. I'd rather have everybody be putting a few rei into a pool, and there's no reason you can't make money that way. So let's not get completely, obsessed, fixated on the idea that attracting big players into your pools is the way to a healthy future. Having products that a lot of people that aren't currently playing want to play, that's the way to get to a much better future. And most people who might bet on horse racing but do not, I would say, have in their head that they don't want to bet on horse racing because they're playing against professionals. They have it in their head that they're better off betting the lottery because there's no professionals playing the lottery, and that they have a better chance doing that than they have trying to make a win bet at a racetrack. That's a problem for us as an industry. And it is up to us to create products that overcome that. So and let me just say also, there's nothing now in the way. I'm trying to figure out whether who's going to react to this, but there's nothing in the way right now of people here in Brazil technologically betting into big pools in the United States. Guess what? I did it a few hours ago. I happened to own a little piece of a horse that was racing at Belmont Park. She finished third. Good result. 28-1. Very good result. I bet her from here. Now, if I can do that, and it wasn't illegal, it's legal. I have an account in the United States, and I came here, and so I'm not showing off because I own a little bit of a horse. I'm simply saying there was nothing that got in the way of making that bet. The only thing that gets in the way of making that bet is a professional, intelligent negotiation between Brazil's racing authority, and the rest of the world about how to allow people to do that, and what should come back here as a fair price for allowing a person here in Brazil to bet into an American pool. That's the only question. The fair price is certainly not that Brazil should only get 3% and the rest goes someplace else. That's ridiculous. And I understand that some negotiations in Brazil kind of circle around numbers like that. It's the opposite. In order to access this marketplace, people should pay a fair price to do that. And there's every reason why they will. There are costs to get the signal here, and they have to be factored in. But let me make myself clear, there's nothing in the way of doing these kinds of deals right now technologically. So what is in the way of doing these? Business and regulation.
Quality of product. You have to sell
The quality of product, well, what we're talking about now is for you here to bet.
No, it's for them to bet in our races. Yeah.
That's
Improve.
very different, right.
Yeah.
That is, see, what I was saying before about how you develop a plan, that's a piece of the plan. What do we have to do here? And the starting point for that I mentioned is better information about the races. The product that we produce here, horses running around the racetrack, I've seen races all around the world. The Brazil product is fine. It's not great, it's not terrible, it's fine. What goes around with it is not acceptable in the international marketplace. I'm used to looking at data about horses that tells me everything they were doing in every one of their races at every point in that race, and what the odds were, and what the trainer's record is, and what the jockey's record is, and it goes on and on and on.
We have all those kind of information. That could be the starting point. To put that all together and start increasing the value of our product.
Absolutely.
That's the starting point.
We
That's
have
not
some of it.
So difficult to do it. You just need the
That's
intention.
a great thing to say. It's not that hard to do, but we have to be focused on what we're trying to do and decide what goes first and what goes next and where are we trying to go. That is exactly right. The quality of information out in the marketplace is it's a level you have to get to in order to be competitive and in order to attract people into the pools. The same thing is going to go on here, though. The better information that people have here, the more likely they are to create a pool that other people would be interested in betting into.
Tchau. So, before we finish, eu queria só terminar fazendo uma colocação para vocês, uma proposta de trabalho. e, ao mesmo tempo, um último comentário. Quer dizer, a proposta de trabalho, na verdade, que a associação vai encabeçar é de convidar a todos os jockeys clubes, a todas as associações.
There's my email address. If anybody, you can send complaints. You can send
Questions or whatever.
your angry state. If it wasn't for complaining, I would never get any emails. So feel free to complain or to make a point, and I will. And you can do it in any language. I can misunderstand anything in Spanish or French or Portuguese. I'm an equal opportunity speaker who can't speak very many languages, but I know how to translate them. So you can say anything you want to me, and I will do my best to respond to it.
Então, só para concluir, então, a associação ela vai encabeçar esse processo. Nós vamos convidar a todos os jockeys clubes, as associações e principalmente os profissionais também, a uma reunião que provavelmente nós vamos pôr de pé no princípio de agosto, para uma primeira discussão e endereçamento desse caminho para um plano. Quer dizer, esse é o compromisso que nós temos e a gente vai levar. Então, de antemão, já coloco a vocês o convite para que venham nos ajudar nessa primeira discussão. E depois, só a título de comentário, realmente, a nossa interlocução, ela realmente não é boa. A gente tem sérios problemas aqui, problema político, problema a gente ficaria aqui a noite inteira se estendendo para reclamar das nossas estruturas. Mas, de fato, se a gente ficar preso nisso, nós vamos ficar aqui a reboque de uma situação que não vai mudar nunca. Então, assim, eu queria realmente a proposta aqui, deixar de lado as questões políticas, pessoais, o que quer que seja, e é uma proposta técnica que nós vamos endereçar, e quem realmente tiver interesse por ajudar nessa mudança é muito bem-vindo. Então, nós vamos levar isso adiante, todos os jockeys clubes serão convidados, as estruturas, as associações, todas a participar desse trabalho, e que realmente a gente espera que com isso a gente consiga pôr de pé uma proposta que possa realmente levar a uma mudança estrutural da nossa atividade. Eu queria terminar agradecendo muito o Tom aqui por todo esse trabalho, para a gente é uma aula. Quero dizer a vocês que o Tom, ele não vem só para esse evento, ele está aqui para nos ajudar em todo esse processo. Então, como ele colocou, se existirem outros pontos, outras questões, neste momento, em agosto, espero que ele esteja aqui de novo com a gente. Se vocês tiverem qualquer outro ponto, qualquer outra questão, por favor, vocês têm o e-mail dele, vocês têm os contatos da associação, por favor, não hesitem em chamar, tá bom? Tom, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you. Muito obrigado.